Hey, can you imagine if right now you fell under the floor and found yourself in a wild tribe of cannibals who think you're their savior? You don't have to imagine, because I'm about to tell you what happened in a 2007 movie called deux mondes, while the Begameni tribe brings another human to the cannibal Zotan, who is keeping the whole tribe in fear for dinner. The chieftain's reader foretells the appearance of the chosen one, who will come from the sky and go in the earth, after defeating Zotan, because he is the most powerful wizard of all worlds. And nowadays in Paris lives an ordinary loser, Remy, who shows his children tricks, and when his wife Lucille takes them away to wash, the man feels for the first time how he fails in a chair. And over an evening meal, it turns out that she is going to Barcelona for work this weekend. In the meantime, the tribe discusses that the chosen one will appear in this tree in 12 lizards. Apparently they have their own count of days. And at night, while watching TV, he had that feeling again. And after that they proceeded to discuss that Dr. Antonio, for whom the girl clearly has a soft spot for, would go with her. And already when everyone goes to bed, the wife does not want to make love to her husband and he falls asleep, while the natives performed some kind of ritual summoning the chosen one and Remy began to trickle back into bed. The next day Remy was ignored at the bar, and when he came with a client to his studio where he restores paintings, he had to deal with surly museum workers who had brought a painting to restore, and after they left, Lucille appeared and brought her children, who immediately made a commotion and his wife did not return until the end of the day, so Remy asked not to bring them here again, but forgot to turn off the water. So the next day he was already rescuing his paintings when he was immediately dragged under the water and found himself in the middle of the lake with his already swollen paintings. The tribe greets him with loud exclamations, "Savior!" But he is dragged back into his world and finds himself in the street, asking his client to come back in a couple of days due to circumstances, while the insurer tells him that the insurance may not be there. In addition, when he returns home his wife declares that she wants a divorce because she has fallen in love with another man. And since this is her home, Antonio shows respect and lets him stay here until he finds a new place to live. In the usual evening meal, he retires to the kitchen to pour coffee, as suddenly their cat is frozen in the air, and he is suddenly dragged under the floor along with the coffee maker and he is sent to another world, where he meets the natives. However, when he thinks he's dreaming, he runs into a nasty chase, in which he even manages to hopelessly call the police. They end up trapping him in a cave with Zotan, and the cannibal only has time to bite Remy before he flies through worlds and floors again and lands in the kitchen making a mess. His family brings him to the doctor who sees no fractures, but she is confused by the bite on his huge jaw, and then Remy confesses that he has been to another world, but the doctor only offers him the number of a psychologist. So he comes home without hope and goes to bed, and the next morning lawyers, insurers, and disgruntled clients surround Remy with displeasure, but he begins to go underground again and finds himself in the same tribal tree. From there, the natives demand that he fly, but it proves unsuccessful, and then they grab him and push a berry into his mouth, which helps him finally understand their language. The tribe happily thinks that this is their new lord, but on inspecting the village he needs to destroy, he decides to refrain from the offer, but the tribe won't let him go so easily. And after agreeing to defeat the village, he is locked in a room to gain energy, but when he takes the watermelon, he moves back to Paris, where he tries to prove to his colleagues and friends that he is in fact transported to another world. But there he also meets his customer Delphine, who was actually worried about him and struck the restorer as interested, but he asks her to come on Friday. Remy decides to find out about the Begameni tribe at the library, but they have no such information, so he picks up a self-defense textbook and starts training at home. But once again in the other world, Begameni asks him to defeat his enemies and they will get away from him. There are 2 pairs of rocks in their village that the Begameni cannot pass through, for a storm is coming upon their settlement. But Remy decides to break these frames and calls for the people to overpopulate, and in the woods they meet guards who chase everyone back. Only Remy won't put up with them this time and gets into a fight in which he defeats one and leaves the other, for then a few moments later a settlement appears which screams that Zotan has declared war. Back in the modern world he reads about the art of war and how to rule the nations. Only the library worker unexpectedly informs him that a good gun shop has opened at the end of the street, where he apparently bought a bulletproof vest and began to work out his tactics for fighting Zotan. He even brought books with him into the other world to discuss tactics while Zotan prepares for tomorrow's attack. After following his enemies, Remy gave an inspirational speech to the people, and in the evening, he took a girl from one of the men and ordered 6 more to be brought in to have a little fun before being delivered from slavery. Only when the girls get down to business does he stop them and wish only to talk, for his whole head is filled with Lucy, so the girls express only support and he suddenly hears his son's voice. Remy comes to his room very quickly and answers the boy's questions about why he and his mother broke up, but eventually puts him to bed, and he himself begins to dive into another world, only for some reason the process stopped and did not come for a very long time, so he decided to practice, only it did not go very well. And in the end the process began when he had already gone to bed and transferred him right into the heart of the battle. But he takes his troops aside and in camp orders him to make something out of wood and bird feathers, and in the cover of night he sets off with his squad following a plan as yet unknown to us. The next morning he arrives directly at the enemy's camp and provokes them to finish him off, but he himself hides in a hollow tree while his tribe fires a bow at the enemy. So Zotan is forced to retreat and the people finally rejoice in their victory. Remy is already fully invested in the role of ruler, planning his new home and cities, the port, the bridges he will build, and planting a whole red avenue for his beloved. He tells the resident how to fix his certain parody electric scooter and comes to the mountains to paint his beloved. Only when he returns to our world, it turns out that he has grown a huge beard and the children have already slept through school. As Lucy and Antoniel immediately return and as he leaves, the man asks Remy to move out quickly, for Lucy does not want to sleep with him while her ex is still here. He gets up the courage to calm down the conflicts in town, quits his job and declares to the job center that he was a politician, an architect and most importantly knew how to settle international conflicts, but his employer gets furious and sends him to work as a promoter in an Indian restaurant. And he gets so annoyed that he drops the flyers and time stops again. He returns to his dream world, where his wife is waiting for him in the beautiful city he built, only new problems arose. The city runs out of water and they need to produce glass as soon as possible, and the people stop working and want to leave to Zotan. He of course tries to settle the conflict, but people do not want such freedom where they only see work, so he gets only humiliation and the city begins to riot, so he is going straight back to our world, never having fulfilled the prophecy. He throws away his cloak and comes to his friend Serge, who lets him spend the night in an abandoned workshop, where he finds a painting of Delphine. After a while Lucy comes to him again and while Antoniel is standing outside the door she confesses that she misses him very much, but immediately Delphine appears and the ex-wife removes with the children. And for the beautifully restored miniature, Remy doesn't ask for a cent, because it was she who helped him find the strength to take up his work again. She should only have invited him to dinner and had a wonderful evening, except that he had to go back to the other world again, where the people force Remy to meet the monster face to defeat him with a blow to the heart. And to everyone's surprise he does it, only after defeating the terrifying monster who has finally left the cave. The chief tells Remy the last part of the prophecy, the people must eat him to get his powers, so he rushes away, and Delphine rather calls an ambulance and Remy is brought to the hospital. And when the people grab him, his loyal servants manage to get the prophecy board out of the fire that the chief tried to get rid of a little earlier and Remy wakes up in the hospital and quickly gets out of his bunk, where his family and both women were waiting for him. It turns out that Lucy broke up with Antoniel and begged Remy to come back, but he decided to think it over on his own. But when Lucy and the children went to Barcelona for a vacation, Remy showed up, and he did return to the children and his beloved wife, while the Begameni were erecting a statue of their savior.